If you want access to my entire library of past webinars, as well as access to future ones, head over to daringventuresathome.com or click the link in the description below.
The model that I use for family of origin work is called Post Induction Therapy. It was developed by Pia Mellody. So everything from here moving forward is either straight from or builds on the work of Pia Mellody, who was at the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona for many, many years. And I feel super privileged. I was actually trained by Pia Mellody in this model. Not only did I attend her training, I was her guinea pig. I was her demo client. And she has us, if we're willing, actually work on real stuff. So not only was I trained by her, but I was actually worked on her using this model. This is the model. My very first therapists were also trained in this model and used this model for my work. And so I knew it as a client before I knew it as a clinician. And then even as I was learning it as a clinician, I was experiencing it as a client from Pia herself. So post-induction therapy, often called PIT, it's an inner child model. And that may or may not make sense to y'all. I'll talk about it more in a little bit. It's a reparenting model, which again is another term that you may or may not know. We'll get into later. And one of the things that I like about it is that the more research comes out from developmental neuroscience and our understanding of complex trauma, it fits. Like Pia, she would say that God gave her the model. I believe her on that, and that she developed it working with clients and through her own healing experience and all that. And here's the deal. It seems that most of it, not all of it, and there are pieces that I change in light of recent research, but it seems that most of it really does align and fit with what we're learning from developmental neuroscience and from our understanding, our growing understanding of complex trauma. So here's the big picture, all right? Big picture of PIT. Every single human being is born with a certain nature and needs to be treated accordingly. We call this the nature of the child. And I'll go ahead and tell you the 5 aspects of the nature of the child. We're going to go over these one by one in a minute. Valuable, vulnerable, imperfect, dependent, and spontaneous and open. That's the nature of every child. And we need is to be treated accordingly. All right, that's what we need, is to be treated accordingly. When we're not treated according to our nature or those aspects of our nature, certain core issues emerge, and these core issues move us to live in extremes. So feeling better than or less than, one up or one down, being completely invulnerable, like nothing's getting in, or way too vulnerable, everything gets in. All right, these core issues emerge. From those core issues, we experience these secondary symptoms inside of us. All right, and we're going to go through what those are. And those then show up in our relationships as the interpersonal symptoms. All right. Now, what we experienced in relationships, remember, our sense of identity is connected to how we experience relationships. So now what these interpersonal symptoms are actually going to do what? Reinforce our core issues. So it started at this point in childhood, but then as it gets lived out, it gets reinforced over and over and over and over and over again. All right. So we're going to walk straight through this. This is going to be a lot of information coming at you fast. Here's what I encourage you to do. Just try to ride the waves with me during my presentation here. Okay. So the first aspect of the nature of the child is that we're valuable. Every human being is born with inherent worth, no more or less than anyone else. Same as, right? As a Christian, the way I would say this is we all bear the image and likeness of God. We're created in the image of likeness of God. Okay. And so that is our sense of value. Think of a child. So today, my baby turns 1 year old today. All right. And I think about a year ago when she was born, she comes out of the womb. What can she do? She can't earn us any money. She who knows if she's smart or not at that point, right? Like she can't perform for us. She can't, what's she going to do? She can't go get a job, but she's worthy. She's got inherent worth. She's invaluable, right? Because it's inherent. And that's true of everybody. And it can't go away. It doesn't go away, even though we think it goes away or we're treated like it's not there. If you're not treated as valuable with inherent value, not because of your intelligence or your athletic ability or your smart, or your looks or whatever, but just inherent to you, then you'll develop the core issue of going one up or one down, self-esteem issues. Okay. So I feel better than, I feel less than, and that's my core issue. So internally, I'm going to have these negative control issues around trying to earn, secure, and maintain my place. If I feel like I have to perform to stay one up because I'm only safe in relationships if I'm one up, if I'm valued for my performance, that's going to show up, right? Or this is kind of sneaky. If I was raised being one down, but that's how I stayed in a relationship with the caregiver, was by being one down to them, then I might make you stay one up. I might keep you on a pedestal because I feel safe feeling one down to you, because that's how I feel like a relationship should be. And that's what I know of relationship. And as I show up in relationships, then the interpersonal symptom there is going to be that I have trouble being same as. I'm going to constantly be going one up or one down. The second aspect of the child's nature is that children are born vulnerable. Again, I think about my daughter being born a year ago, totally vulnerable, right? When she's born, totally in need of protection. And so what we're to do is protect, but we can't protect them in the same way forever. Even today, 1 year later, I don't protect my daughter in the way I did on the day she was born. I had to protect the soft spot on her head and her neck, and right. And now she's, walking around and trying to climb things and all of this kind of stuff. And I still need to protect her, but I need to protect her according to where she is in her development. And as she develops, I need to start to teach her what? How to protect herself. Now, if we're not treated accordingly to this aspect of our nature, we're going to develop boundary issues. We're not going to be able to protect ourselves. We're either going to be too vulnerable because we never learned to keep anything from coming in or protect ourselves, or we're going to be completely invulnerable because that's the strategy we adopted. It's just too safe out here to let nothing in, do nothing, right? So the interpersonal symptoms here are resentment. Now think about this. You think resentment? Yeah, that's right, resentment. Let's say that my neighbor comes over and says, hey, I need to borrow a cup of milk. Oh, no problem. Yeah, here's some milk. All right, and I give him some milk. And then the next day he texts and he says, hey, still didn't make it to the store. Can I come get another, I just need another 2 cups of milk for this recipe. Yeah, no problem. We got it. My wife, she loves milk. We've always got 3 containers of milk. Come on over, buddy. But then the third day he comes over and he texts again. He's like, hey, still needing some milk. I go, okay, yeah, come on and get the milk. What am I starting to feel? Go get your own milk, man. What's the deal? I'm holding him responsible for a boundary I didn't set. That's how we get to resentment. Because I expect you to know to just not ask me that or treat me that way. When I'm not saying, no, I'm sorry, now we're down to our last one, and between the 3 of us, that's all we really have. I tell you what, I bet you could go right over there and get you some milk right now at the store. Now, how's that going to show up in relationships? What are the interpersonal symptoms? I'm going to either struggle with enmeshment or avoidance or a vacillation between the two. Enmeshment, no appreciation for where I am and the other person begins, so that their reality I adopt as my own. Or they need milk, I think I can't say no, my milk is their milk, right? Or avoidance. Now he texts and I'm like, I see it's him and I'm not even answering. I'm pretending like I don't see it. Avoidance, because I don't want to be taken advantage of, or I vacillate between the two. So that's the second one. That's the second core issue there. All right. The third is the issue of reality. And the reality is that children are born perfectly imperfect. Okay. My baby was born, I'd say she was perfect, but guess what? The reality is everyone's imperfect. We're born with a learning curve. We're going to make mistakes. She's going to trip. She does trip and fall as she's learning to walk, right? She's going to eat something she shouldn't eat. She's going to do these things as she learns. All right. We all do. Even as adults, guess what? We still make mistakes. we're imperfect. Well, if I'm not treated like imperfection is reality, I'm going to have issues around the reality of my own person and personhood. I'm going to think that I have to be good and perfect, that my reality is that that's the bar I need to cross. Or I'm going to think that because I'm imperfect, that makes me bad. Therefore, I might as well be rebellious. So let me give an example here. This is important. Let's fast forward 2 years. So now my daughter MJ is about 3 years old, and we're sitting at the dinner table, and I say to her, MJ, bottom in the seat while we eat. Bottom in the seat while we, I kind of like that. It rhymes. I'm going to have to remember that. Bottom in the seat while we eat. Okay. If you need to sit down, and she's kind of acting up. She's old enough to know what we mean, right? So this is developmentally appropriate. I need you to sit down while we eat, and then we'll play. So I'm being developmentally appropriate, right? And then she doesn't mind, and then she spills her milk. All right. And I say, okay, see, we told you this is what would happen. You need to sit over here and while we clean this up, okay? And we do that. She goes, she's crying. We love you. It's okay, but this is why we have you obey us, because these things happen. And it's okay to spill your milk, but this is why okay. So we teach in that moment. Well, then the next night, all right, she's obeying, butts in the seat, and just accidentally spills the milk. Just mistake, pure mistake. If I react the exact same way, I'm sending the message, there's no difference between misbehaving, right, and making a mistake. That's a problem. That's a problem. We need to be raised knowing it's okay to make mistakes, but it's not okay to use our imperfection as an excuse to violate others. What are the symptoms that come up from this? Well, the intrapersonal, so within me, symptom that I experience is around spirituality. And this is about grace, okay? If I think I have to be good and perfect, this is perfect, and I think I have to clear that hurdle, there is no space for grace here. Versus this is good and perfect, and I know I'm not there, there's plenty of space for grace in that worldview, okay? Now, what if I think because I'm not this, therefore I'm bad and rebellious? Well, now there's no place for grace anyway, not open for it, right? I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy of it, which is not what, goes against the very definition of grace, but that's beside the point if you're of that mindset. So I'm not even looking for it because it's not for me. It's not open to me. Now, the interpersonal system, how this is going to show up in relationships is dishonesty. Why? Because the reality is I'm not perfect. So if I think I have to be perfect, of course I'm going to be dishonest. What other option do I have? I can't show you that I'm imperfect if I think I'm supposed to be perfect. Or if I'm bad and rebellious, my dishonesty is just a part of who I am. It's what I do. I can't remember not being that way. So that's the third issue. The third of 5 is the issue of reality and being imperfect. Fourth issue is around dependency. So, great point, Bob. This is reinforced within some churches. Yeah, very rigid, legalistic faith communities can definitely reinforce those issues. So the fourth one is dependency. Again, think about that little baby. Day she's born, totally dependent, can't do anything for herself, right? So every single child born dependent. So we need the caregiver to meet our needs, meet our wants, teach us the difference between needs and wants, show us how to meet them appropriately, model for us what that looks like, so that as we get older, we can do that for ourselves in healthy ways. If we don't get that, we're going to have dependency issues. And here it's a little bit different than the others because there are 3 flavors. I can become too dependent, where I can't do anything for myself, anti-dependent, okay, where I never ask for help, or needless, wantless. I'm not even in touch with my needs and wants. So I can't be too dependent to get them met. Can't be anti-dependent because they're not even on my radar. The intrapersonal, so within myself symptoms here, are things like physical illness and mental health issues and addictions and anxieties because I'm not taking care of myself, not going to the dentist, or I'm not, whatever it is. No one will make the appointment for me, too dependent, or I don't need to go get my checkup done, anti-dependent, or not even on my radar to get my teeth checked, needless, wantless. The interpersonal symptoms that show up in relationships is that we have a hard time maintaining healthy interdependence. asking for help, asking for needs and wants to be met, meeting others to their needs and wants in healthy ways, right? Understanding interdependence. For those of you who are Christians, there's a verse it's in Galatians, right? A couple of verses in Galatians. It says, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." And then like 2 verses later, it says, "Each one must carry his own load." And that used to confuse me. What's the deal here? Bear one another's burdens, but then each one must carry his own load. Well, what I learned is that those are shipping terms. A burden, very specifically, is something like cargo on a ship that's going to require a team of people to get it on or off the ship. A load is specifically packed for one man to be able to carry. So do I know the difference between burdens and loads? Do I ask for help when I have a burden? Do I do it myself when I have a load? Do I take on other people's loads like their burdens? So it's those sorts of issues. And the last aspect of the nature of the child is that children are spontaneous and open. So there's that little baby, and guess what? Crying coming out, no containment of the crying, right? Drool, poop, pee, flailing arms and legs, totally spontaneous and open. That's how we're all born, and we need containment boundaries. The very first boundary that a child ever experiences is latching for breastfeeding. It's the first form of containment, and it saves their lives. It keeps them alive, right? They learn that boundaries are life-giving, or they should anyway. That's what they should learn. Well, if we're not treated accordingly, if we're not raised learning how that, you don't run and scream at the funeral home, but you do it out on the playground, then we're going to have moderation issues of being either out of control, like we can't even control ourselves, or so controlling that we try to control others. So what are the symptoms that emerge here? Well, the intrapersonal symptom inside myself is around intimacy issues. Okay, intimacy issues like too much, too fast, or not enough. Here's what I mean by that. I can't let myself out. I have a fear of being intimate with you. I can't let myself out. I'm too walled in, and so I'm not really known. I'm hiding too much of myself. I'm not letting you see me out of fear, or, well, it could be a lot of different reasons. Okay, or the flip side of that, it's a first date, and I'm telling you my entire life story down to the nitty-gritty, dirty details that, aren't appropriate at this point in the relationship. And interpersonally, the symptom is confusion of intimacy for intensity. So if I'm feeling intensity in the relationship, I think that's intimacy. So feeling all these feelings, I think that means I'm connected and known. And that's not true.